Have you ever wondered what truly happens to your body, your mind, and even your spirit when you touch that hidden source of power inside you, the spring of sexual energy that flows silently, beyond age, beyond time? Most people grow older believing that vitality slowly fades, that desire is nothing more than a reminder of youth slipping away. But what if I told you that this invisible river of creative energy never disappears? That it's not just physical desire, not just a passing impulse, but a luminous thread that connects you with the very force that gives life to the universe itself? Has this ever happened to you, feeling that there's more behind your desires than the simple act of seeking pleasure? Inside you lives a source as real as the air you breathe, an eternal current of sexual energy that has little to do with age and everything to do with how you choose to use it. At 40, at 60, even at 80 years old, this power does not dry up. It simply transforms, waiting for you to decide whether it will be wasted or cultivated. And that choice, whether you let it slip away unconsciously or direct it with intention, can mean the difference between a life drained of vitality and one that radiates energy, clarity, and depth. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Think for a moment about the word energy. We use it casually, as if it were only about calories or physical stamina. Yet the ancients knew that sexual energy is more than that. It is the most sacred force in existence. A hidden fire, capable of consuming you in seconds if ignored, or becoming the fuel for your health, creativity, and spiritual connection if embraced consciously. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you and completely change the way you see your body, your desire, and your life. This energy is not about morality, repression, or shame. It is about awakening. Awakening to the truth that inside you burns a spark that doesn't age. A spark that continues to pulse with the same intensity, whether you're 20 or 70. The difference lies in awareness. As we grow older, we often fall into mechanical habits, forgetting that every intimate moment is not just a release of tension, but an exchange with the deepest levels of our being. Have you ever felt that after certain experiences you were left empty, while other times you felt strangely alive, as if something within you had been renewed? That is the hidden spring at work, sometimes wasted, sometimes revealed. Imagine your body as a temple with an invisible fountain at its center. Every thought, every heartbeat, every act of desire draws from it. The question is, will you allow it to drain carelessly, or will you learn to guide it, to let that current nourish not only your physical body, but your heart and your mind as well? Think of it as a choice between letting water run aimlessly into the sand or channeling it into a garden where it grows flowers, fruit, and life itself. What you're listening to right now is not a warning, not a sermon, but an invitation, a call to rediscover the luminous thread that runs through your entire being, to recognize that your sexual energy is not a passing urge, but the very river that sustains your vitality and can carry you toward greater clarity, balance, and even spiritual connection. Stay with me, because in just a moment, we'll begin to open the door to these ancient truths. And once that door opens, you may never see yourself or your energy the same way again. If insights like this resonate with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next revelations we'll explore together. When habits take over, something profound gets lost. Think about how many times in life we act on autopilot, eating without tasting, breathing without noticing, walking without really being present. Now imagine that same automatic mode applied to your most intimate energy. Masturbation, for many as they grow older, becomes just that, a mechanical action, almost like turning on a switch, seeking a quick spark of pleasure without realizing the immense current of electricity that rushes through the wires. And here lies the hidden truth. Every time that switch is flipped unconsciously, it's not only tension that escapes, but fragments of the very vitality that sustains your body, sharpens your mind, and keeps your spirit connected to something greater. This isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. Behind the scenes of what most people see as a simple act, there is a revelation few dare to explore. Each release is more than chemistry. Yes, dopamine and oxytocin dance through your system, creating the familiar rush, but at the same time, you are letting go of a reservoir of subtle energy that has the power to transform your entire state of being. It's like pouring out drops of liquid, gold, without ever realizing how rare and precious they are. The immediate relief can feel satisfying, but the long-term impact often shows itself in fatigue, loss of drive, scattered focus, and even the dimming of that inner light that once made life feel more vivid. Ancient traditions understood this in ways that modern science is only beginning to confirm. Taoism, Tantra, and other mystical paths didn't see sexual energy as something trivial or shameful. They called it the sacred fire of force, that, if wasted, could burn you out, but if cultivated and directed, could become the very fuel for transformation, healing, and clarity. The Taoists spoke of Jing, the vital essence, describing how each moment of careless release was like letting water leak from a sacred vessel. The Tantric masters described it as Shakti, the primordial force, a river of power capable of awakening dormant centers in the body and opening doors to higher perception. Even in the secret schools of Egypt, sexuality was seen as alchemy, a fire that, if guided with intention, could influence health, creativity, and even destiny. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because it's here that the shift in mindset truly begins. Imagine for a second that your energy is a currency. Most people spend it on fleeting pleasures, never thinking twice about the cost. But what if you began saving it, investing it, multiplying it? The decisions you make in those private moments shape far more than you might believe. They shape your vitality, your presence, even the way others perceive your strength. This isn't about repression. It's about choosing power over loss, transformation over stagnation. And the most fascinating part is that your age makes this practice even more potent. In youth, the body generates energy so quickly that waste seems invisible. But in maturity, when every drop carries more weight, the opportunity for deeper mastery presents itself. The hidden truth is that this energy was never meant to be burned out unconsciously. It was meant to be directed, cultivated, used as a bridge between the human and the divine. To let it escape without awareness is to throw away one of the greatest resources you have. To learn how to guide it, however, is to step into a journey of self-discovery that expands far beyond the physical. It touches your creativity, your intuition, your resilience, and your capacity to love with greater depth. And this is where we start to uncover not just the science of energy, but the ancient wisdom that reveals its real impact on every aspect of your life. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." And let's continue to explore how this hidden fire can be transformed into strength, clarity, and connection. When you begin to see intimacy, not as an escape, but as a ceremony, everything shifts. The same act that many live through as a moment of relief can be transformed into something sacred, almost like lighting a candle in a quiet temple. It is not about suppressing desire or labeling it as something forbidden. It is about giving meaning to the flame that rises within you. Every breath, every movement, every thought becomes part of a conscious ritual, one where you are both the priest and the altar, both the seeker and the source of energy. The hidden truth is that even the most private act can turn into a channel for creation, for transformation, for reconnecting with the vitality that often lies dormant behind the noise of routine. This perspective is not meant to weigh you down with guilt or rules, but to invite you to rediscover what was always there, waiting for attention. Sexual energy, when approached with awareness, ceases to be just a biological discharge and becomes a kind of inner medicine. It nourishes your body, sharpens your mind, and strengthens your spirit. Think of it like a natural elixir flowing within you, an elixir that, when wasted unconsciously, drains you, but when cultivated with intention, restores your clarity and expands your presence. And perhaps what makes this so powerful is that no one can do it for you. It is a personal journey, a decision you make each time you choose awareness over automatism. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because history itself carries traces of how humanity once revered this force. In ancient temples, behind heavy doors and guarded corridors, priests and priestesses whispered truths that common people never heard. They knew that sexual energy was not a simple act of pleasure or procreation, but a bridge between the human and the divine. To them, intimacy was not just flesh meeting flesh, it was spirit meeting spirit. Energy merging with energy, an opening of portals that connected heaven and earth. The impact of this perspective is immense, because it reveals that behind the scenes of ordinary desire lies a current capable of elevating consciousness, strengthening health, and even influencing destiny. The revelations of Taoist masters, tantric yogis, and Egyptian initiates may sound mystical, but they all point to the same understanding. This energy is sacred fire. Fire that can burn everything if left wild, or fire that can illuminate if guided with wisdom. The mindset required here is not about denial, but about mastery. It's the same difference between a forest fire and a candle flame. The first destroys, the second lights the path. Your decisions in those intimate moments are the match that determines which way the fire will go. Behind these ancient teachings lies a hidden truth. Sexuality was never seen as a mere instinct, but as one of the highest tools of transformation. Rituals were created, symbols carved, words guarded in secrecy, all to preserve the knowledge that the body itself holds the key to spiritual awakening. And although much of this wisdom was buried under centuries of repression and distortion, fragments remain, enough for us to piece together and realize that the human being was designed to live this energy as a gift, not a burden. Subscribe to the channel, and let's keep walking this journey side by side, uncovering truths that transform the way we see life. When you recognize this, intimacy becomes more than a fleeting encounter. It becomes a journey, one where you are called to participate fully, with presence, with intention, with reverence. The act itself stops being about release and starts being about integration, about weaving the threads of desire, awareness, and vitality into one tapestry of inner strength. And the more you align with this understanding, the more you notice its impact on every area of your life. Your creativity grows sharper, your emotions steadier, your spirit lighter. This is why, when we revisit those ancient temples and imagine the whispers of wisdom echoing through their walls, we're not just looking at history, we're looking at a mirror of what we still carry inside. That same bridge between the human and the divine is alive in you right now, waiting for recognition. And as we go further into this path, that bridge begins to reveal its deeper layers, showing that what most people see as ordinary desire is in fact the gateway to extraordinary transformation. Write in the comments, "I recognize this sacred fire," and allow yourself to affirm what has always been hidden in plain sight. In the hidden corridors of Taoist tradition, masters spoke of something most people today have forgotten, the essence called Jing. They described it as the foundation of life itself, a subtle treasure stored within the body, more precious than gold or jewels. To waste it carelessly was compared to carrying water in a cracked vessel. No matter how much you tried to fill it, it would slowly drain away, leaving you weaker, emptier, less present. The wisdom behind this teaching reveals a hidden truth that touches every decision we make about how we use our energy. The Taoists believed that preserving Jing not only extended vitality, but also sharpened perception, strengthened the organs, and even influenced the clarity of the mind. It was not about control for the sake of control, but about choosing where to direct the most powerful current of life running through you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the Taoist understanding naturally connects with what the tantric tradition in India also uncovered. Tantra spoke of Shakti, the primal feminine force, the pulse of creation itself. This energy, when awakened, rises through the spine as Kundalini, activating centers of consciousness that usually remain dormant. To them, intimacy, whether with oneself or with another, wasn't simply about release, but about awakening, about channeling that creative force upward to expand awareness and connect with something far beyond the physical. They saw in sexual energy the possibility of transcendence, where desire became light, pleasure became clarity, and what was once instinct became spiritual revelation. And this was not limited to the East. Behind the scenes of the temples of ancient Egypt, a similar understanding existed. There, rituals involving sensual union and even self-pleasure were considered acts of magic when performed consciously. They taught that arousal opened a channel of energy, and if that channel was directed toward an elevated purpose, it could influence health, protect against illness, and even alter the course of destiny. To modern ears, this may sound mystical or symbolic, yet what lies beneath is a strikingly practical mindset. Energy is never neutral. It either dissipates into emptiness or transforms into power, depending on how it is guided. The impact of these ancient revelations is hard to ignore. Across different cultures and times, the same truth emerged again and again. Sexual energy is sacred fire. When it is scattered unconsciously, it drains the body and fogs the mind. When it is cultivated with awareness, it becomes a force of transformation, creativity, and profound vitality. This convergence of wisdom across civilizations suggests that we are not simply dealing with philosophy or belief, but with a universal principle, one woven into the very fabric of human existence. Think for a moment about how this connects with your own journey. How many times have you treated your energy as if it were infinite, not realizing the long-term cost of careless habits? And how different might your life feel if you shifted that mindset, if you chose to value this inner resource as the ancients did? This is not about living by rigid rules, but about recognizing that every act, even the most private, carries weight. It shapes the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you walk through the world. It shapes your presence, your creativity, your capacity to love deeply. The deeper truth behind Taoist, Tantric, and Egyptian practices is that your energy is not something external to you. It is you. It is your life force, your hidden reservoir, your unseen strength. To approach it consciously is to step into alignment with the wisdom of those who came before us, those who understood that the bridge between the human and the divine begins not in the sky, but in the body, in the very current of vitality flowing through your veins. Write in the comments, "I honor my essence," and let this be a small declaration that you too are ready to see this force not as something trivial, but as the sacred power it has always been. For centuries, the message surrounding this force was twisted. What had once been revered as sacred fire was gradually reshaped into something forbidden, wrapped in layers of fear, guilt, and silence. Religions and institutions, seeking control over people's inner worlds, began labeling sexual energy as sin or shame. They told stories that cast desire in the shadows, not because it lacked value, but precisely because it held so much power. Behind the scenes, however, fragments of the hidden truth survived. In monasteries, secret circles, and esoteric teachings, the essential wisdom was kept alive, that this current of life was never meant to be demonized, but embraced, guided, and elevated. Those who understood it knew that the real danger was not the energy itself, but the ignorance of how to use it. Fast forward to our modern era, and the distortion has taken on a different shape. Instead of fear, we see trivialization. Intimacy, once seen as a gateway to transformation, is often reduced to fast images, shallow distractions, and instant consumption. The digital world has turned sexuality into a product, endlessly available, yet emptied of depth. What once required presence, connection, and reverence is now packaged into fleeting stimulation, leaving people with the illusion of fulfillment, but behind the scenes, draining the very essence they need to feel truly alive. This cultural shift has created a mindset where people confuse intensity with intimacy, forgetting that real energy exchange is not about how quickly it burns, but how deeply it nourishes. Join the community by subscribing. It's here that we dive into the knowledge often left hidden behind the scenes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because hidden within this contrast lies one of the most fascinating revelations of all. In maturity, when many believe their energy is fading, sexual energy can actually reveal its most powerful form. This is where perspective changes everything. Instead of being a force that consumes, it becomes a medicine, a subtle yet potent fuel for longevity, clarity, and emotional balance. The very same current that once drove impulsive desire can, with awareness, be transformed into vitality that strengthens the body, calms the mind, and expands the spirit. The decisions you make around this energy in later life carry an impact far greater than in youth, because each choice shapes not only how you feel in the moment, but how you age, how you think, and how you connect with the world. The hidden truth is that aging does not diminish sexual energy, it refines it. Every year adds a layer of wisdom, a chance to step off the treadmill of compulsion and into the art of conscious creation. What was once instinct can now be elevated into intention. What was once a quick release can now be transformed into a reservoir of strength. And this is not about denial. It is about rediscovering the power of direction. Energy, after all, is never lost, it is only guided. To allow it to spill unconsciously is one decision. To choose to channel it toward healing, focus, and inner clarity is another. The difference between the two paths is the difference between feeling depleted and feeling deeply alive. This is why many ancient teachings whispered that the true fountain of youth is not outside us, but within us, flowing through the very channels of our own bodies. In maturity, that fountain does not run dry, it simply waits to be redirected. And once it is, the impact is undeniable. Sharper memory, steadier mood, greater resilience, and a spiritual connection that feels less like a concept and more like a lived experience. Write in the comments, "I choose vitality," and let it serve as a reminder that the energy you carry today is still the most powerful medicine you possess. When you begin to understand that sexuality is not simply an outlet, but a doorway, the entire perception of desire changes. What many see as an ending, a fleeting moment of relief, becomes instead tool for inner transformation. It is no longer about chasing release, but about entering a state where body, mind, and spirit align. This is the hidden truth behind the act. When guided with presence, it stops being a cycle of exhaustion and becomes a cycle of renewal. Transformation begins the moment you shift your mindset from consumption to creation, from escape to integration. And this shift brings us face to face with something essential, the recognition of the body as a sacred temple. We are taught to treat our bodies as machines, as if they were only flesh and bone. But within this physical form lies a cauldron of vital essence, more subtle and mysterious than chemistry alone. It is vibrational, an inner fire that can ignite not only passion, but clarity, focus, and vitality. Think of this fire as the unseen flame that has always been there, pulsing behind the scenes, waiting to be used not just for instinct, but for evolution. Every choice you make, every decision about how you treat your energy, either nourishes this fire or lets it fade into ashes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the difference between youth and maturity reveals a truth few are willing to face. In youth, the body generates energy so quickly that waste seems invisible. You burn, you recover, and you move on without noticing the long-term cost. But with age, the balance changes. Every drop of this vital essence becomes more precious, every spark more significant. This is not a loss, it is an invitation. The slowing of the body is not a punishment, but an opportunity to enter a new stage of mastery. In maturity, the careless burning that once went unnoticed now becomes a conscious decision with visible consequences. And at the same time, the potential for depth, for direction, for transformation becomes greater than ever before. This is why ancient wisdom emphasized awareness at later stages of life. They knew that the power of energy was not weaker, but more refined, more capable of fueling clarity of thought, stability of emotion, and the expansion of consciousness. Imagine having a source of energy that, instead of scattering you, grounds you. Instead of leaving you drained, it fills you with presence. That is what maturity offers. Not the end of vitality, but the refinement of it. The body becomes less about impulse and more about direction, less about fleeting highs, and more about sustained strength. Behind the scenes, this is the journey of turning instinct into wisdom. When the cauldron of essence is treated as sacred, the body itself feels different. You notice the impact in your breath, in your posture, in the way your eyes shine, and in the weight of your presence. Others can sense it without you saying a word, because energy is never silent. It speaks through the way you carry yourself, through your creativity, and even through the calmness you project in moments of pressure. The hidden truth is that energy never lies. It always reveals how you are living. And so, sexuality stops being an end and becomes a tool, not just for pleasure, but for evolution. This doesn't mean denying desire, but transforming it into a current that nourishes your journey rather than interrupts it. Think of it as a river. In youth, it flows wildly, spilling everywhere. In maturity, the river narrows, but with the right direction, its impact is far greater, carving valleys, moving stones, shaping landscapes. That is the power of energy when guided with awareness. Put down, "I honor my temple," and let this phrase serve as a reminder that your body, your energy, and your fire are not accidents of biology, but sacred tools for transformation. When the act becomes mechanical, something subtle but profound begins to slip away. Every unconscious release creates what ancient masters described as a leak of essence, a slow draining of the very force that could be used to heal, regenerate, and expand your awareness. At first, this leak may feel harmless, hidden behind the temporary relief that follows, but its impact over time is undeniable. It is like carrying a container of the purest water and watching it drip through tiny cracks until one day you realize the well has run dry. The hidden truth here is that energy never disappears without leaving a trace. It either nourishes you or leaves you depleted. This is why so many people feel an unexplained emptiness after what was supposed to be a moment of satisfaction. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because the real issue was never the fire itself, but the absence of direction. Fire, by its nature, can either destroy or illuminate, depending on how it is guided. The same flame that burns down a forest can warm a home if placed within a hearth. In the same way, sexual energy, when left without intention, scatters into nothingness. But when it is elevated and circulated with awareness, it fuels clarity, strengthens the body, and expands the boundaries of consciousness. It becomes a current that not only sustains life, but enriches it. The difference lies entirely in the mindset, in the decisions you make in the quiet moments where instinct often takes control. To understand this more clearly, think of energy as electricity. When harnessed, electricity powers entire cities, lights the darkness, and drives transformation across every corner of human life. But when wasted as uncontrolled sparks, it burns out instantly, leaving nothing but smoke. Sexual energy functions the same way. Each impulse is a charge of electricity waiting to be directed. Without awareness, it flashes and disappears, but with intention, it powers the system from within. The impact of this realization is enormous, because it means that what feels like a fleeting moment can actually be the starting point of a journey into greater vitality, focus, and inner balance. Behind the scenes of ordinary desire lies an extraordinary revelation. You are not powerless before your instincts. On the contrary, you hold the key to deciding whether energy drains you or empowers you. This is not about repression, nor about fear, but about recognizing the value of what flows through you and choosing to treat it as sacred. The leak of essence only happens when presence is absent. When you bring attention, when you guide the current consciously, the body begins to respond differently. Instead of emptiness, you feel fullness. Instead of fatigue, you feel renewed strength. Instead of mental fog, you discover clarity. This is where transformation begins, when you realize that energy is not just chemistry, but vibration, direction, and purpose. Every spark is an opportunity to either lose yourself in momentary habit or to build a deeper connection with your own essence. It is the difference between living on autopilot and living with mastery. And what makes this even more fascinating is that the choice is not bound to youth, but perhaps even more powerful in maturity, because with time, you become more aware of the consequences of every decision, more capable of noticing how subtle shifts in your energy affect the way you think, feel, and move through the world. Energy is never neutral. It carries within it the power to shape your journey, to alter your mindset, and to influence not just your body, but your destiny. The question is not whether the current exists, it always does, but whether you will let it spark out into nothingness or channel it into the force that lights your path forward. Write in the comments, "I choose direction," and affirm to yourself that your energy is not random, but a current waiting for you to guide it. Modern science, in its careful and clinical way, has begun to confirm what the ancients already whispered behind temple walls. Arousal is not just an impulse, it triggers an entire storm of biochemistry. Dopamine sharpens motivation and craving. Oxytocin weaves bonds of trust and intimacy. Serotonin regulates mood and balance. These are not random coincidences, but part of a delicate system that reveals how profoundly sexual energy is tied to every layer of human experience. Yet here lies the hidden truth. While science measures the chemicals, it rarely asks the deeper question of direction. Because what truly matters is not only what is released in the brain, but what you decide to do with that surge. The mindset you bring to these moments determines whether the fire flickers out into emptiness or becomes a force that strengthens your health, creativity, and clarity of thought. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is where perspective changes everything. We are taught to see climax as the end of the story, a discharge, a finale, an inevitable collapse into exhaustion. But what if that belief is itself the distortion? What if climax could be lived as an expansion instead of a depletion? Imagine energy not leaving you, but radiating through you, spreading into every cell, igniting the nervous system with light instead of draining it into silence. This shift in perception is not fantasy. It is a revelation that ancient practitioners lived and modern seekers are rediscovering. The explosion of pleasure can, with awareness, be transformed into a wave of vitality that expands consciousness instead of diminishing it. Behind the scenes, this requires a subtle but powerful decision to meet desire, not with compulsion, but with presence. When you enter intimacy with awareness, whether alone or with a partner, you turn what most see as an automatic act into a ritual of transformation. Masturbation, so often buried under layers of taboo and guilt, becomes a mirror. It becomes a sacred space where you explore yourself, not only physically, but spiritually, where the focus shifts from chasing relief to cultivating energy. In that space, every touch, every breath, every pause becomes intentional, a way of communicating with your own essence. The act is no longer about escape, but about discovery. This ritualized approach turns a moment of instinct into a ceremony of awakening. Instead of emptiness afterward, there is fullness. Instead of a fading spark, there is a lingering fire. And slowly, this practice begins to alter the way you walk through life. Your creativity sharpens, your focus steadies, and your presence deepens. Others notice something different in you, though they may not understand what it is. It is the impact of energy consciously guided, a transformation of desire into strength, of impulse into mastery. The revelation is that there is nothing inherently trivial or shameful in self-pleasure. It is the intention that defines the outcome. Treat it as consumption, and it drains you. Treat it as ritual, and it awakens you. What science maps as neurotransmitters, the ancients recognized as sacred fire, and both are simply two languages describing the same truth. Your energy is the most powerful resource you possess. And when you meet it with reverence, it stops being just about pleasure and starts becoming about expansion, healing, and creation. Put down, "I honor my fire," and let that simple phrase remind you that the current within you is not a burden to be hidden, but a gift to be consciously lived. For centuries, masters of transmutation devoted their lives to understanding what most of the world ignored, that sexual energy, when properly guided, is not a burden, but a motor of evolution. Taoists spoke of circulating it through the body Yogis described awakening it as kundalini, and alchemists in the West saw it as the raw material for transformation, the hidden stone from which inner gold could be forged. They all shared the same revelation that what many wasted in moments of impulse could instead be the very current that lifted human beings into higher states of vitality, creativity, and consciousness. Their message was not about abstinence for its own sake, but about direction, about realizing that this fire was never meant to be extinguished thoughtlessly, but cultivated as the most intimate tool for growth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the heart of the matter lies in focus. For most, the act is approached as a search for immediate pleasure, a brief spark that quickly fades. But when the perspective changes, the entire experience is rewritten. Imagine fire. Left uncontrolled, it devours wood in moments, leaving ashes behind. Redirected with purpose, that same fire warms a home, cooks food, and sustains life. Sexual energy functions in precisely the same way. Left in the hands of compulsion, it leaves emptiness. Redirected with awareness, it becomes fuel long-lasting, transformative, deeply nourishing. This is not about denial, but about replacing old patterns with new decisions, exchanging consumption for creation, and letting instinct evolve into mastery. The ancients knew that one of the most powerful allies in this process is the breath. Breathing is not just a physical act, it is the bridge between body and mind, instinct and awareness. When desire rises, most people breathe shallowly, letting the energy pool in one place until it spills out unconsciously. But conscious breathing changes everything. By drawing air deep into the abdomen and letting it expand, you invite energy to rise, to climb the spine like a luminous current, transforming what once felt heavy into something light and radiant. The breath becomes a tool of clarity, a way of calming the restless mind while simultaneously feeding the fire with direction. Behind the scenes, this practice is deceptively simple, yet its impact is immense. With each deep breath, the body learns to circulate energy instead of wasting it. With each intentional inhale, desire begins to lose its compulsive grip and reveals its deeper nature as a force not to be feared, but to be embraced with awareness. This is the hidden truth. Breath is not just oxygen. It is the rhythm that gives shape to energy, the silent key that allows passion to be transmuted into presence. What makes this journey even more powerful is how subtle its effects can be. Over time, you begin to notice that you are not only less drained, but more alive. Your mind grows clearer, your emotions steadier, your body more resilient. You walk differently, speak differently, and even think differently, because the current flowing through you is no longer fragmented. It is whole, aligned, and consciously directed. This is the essence of transformation, shifting from a mindset of loss to a mindset of cultivation, from being carried away by impulses to becoming the one who guides them. Put down, "I choose to transmute," and let that phrase remind you that your energy is not meant to be lost in the shadows of habit, but elevated into the light of awareness. One of the most fascinating discoveries of the ancient masters was that the body itself holds keys to channeling this fire. And one of those keys lies in muscular control. Subtle contractions in the pelvic floor and abdomen act like invisible gates, closing what they called the lower door so that energy doesn't spill outward, while simultaneously opening the upper door, allowing the current to rise. It may sound simple, but the impact is profound. With each conscious contraction, you are telling your body that this energy is not meant to be wasted, it is meant to be lifted. What once felt like an unstoppable flow downward begins to transform into a river that climbs, nourishing the organs, illuminating the mind, and strengthening the very core of your presence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happens after this redirection is where the real transformation begins. At first, desire feels like a tyrant, pulling you toward compulsion, making you believe you have no choice but to obey. But with practice, the balance shifts. You begin to realize that desire itself is neutral. It is not an enemy, only a force, waiting to be guided. When you learn to work with it, to redirect it rather than resist it, desire ceases to be a master and becomes a servant. Instead of dragging you into habits that drain, it fuels your clarity, your strength, your creativity. It becomes a resource you can call upon, a hidden reservoir that supports your journey rather than interrupting it. This is the hidden truth. Desire was never meant to enslave you. It was meant to awaken you. It was meant to remind you of the fire within, not so you could extinguish it, but so you could use it to build, to expand, to evolve. And as this practice deepens, you notice a remarkable shift in where that energy begins to settle. When lifted to the heart, it becomes something entirely different. The same force that once surged as raw instinct softens into compassion, tenderness, and authentic love. Relationships stop being based solely on physical attraction and start carrying the depth of presence and care. Intimacy becomes a language of the soul, not just of the body. Raised even higher, toward the mind, the transformation continues. What once burned as restless desire now shines as intuition and creativity. Ideas flow with greater ease, focus sharpens, and moments of inspiration arrive, as if from nowhere. It is as though the very energy that once scattered you is now constructing bridges within you, bridges that connect thought and feeling, instinct and wisdom, action and purpose. This is where creativity begins to feel less like effort and more like revelation, as if you are simply channeling a current that was always there, waiting to be unlocked. Behind the scenes of this practice lies a truth that can reshape your entire mindset. Energy follows attention. Where you direct your focus, the current flows. The body listens, the spirit responds, and desire itself reshapes into whatever channel you choose. This is not repression, nor escape. It is transformation. It is the moment you realize that what you once thought was beyond your control has been in your hands, or rather in your awareness, all along. Put down, I guide my energy, and let it serve as a reminder that within you lies not only the fire, but also the ability to shape where it burns and what it creates. The ancient teachers were clear. The true art of working with this force is not about repression, but about alchemy. To repress is to deny, to push down, to suffocate what naturally seeks expression. But transmutation is different. It is the act of taking instinct and allowing it to rise into something higher, something luminous. It is the hidden truth that the same current capable of pulling you into compulsion can, with awareness, elevate you into states of clarity and presence that feel almost divine. When instinct is transmuted, it doesn't vanish, it transforms. Desire is not destroyed. It is refined into consciousness, into love, into creation. This is what makes the practice so powerful. It takes what the world often sees as weakness and reveals it as a doorway to strength. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the difference between theory and practice is where transformation actually happens. It's easy to hear these ideas, to feel inspired for a moment, and then return to the same patterns. But energy doesn't respond to ideas alone. It responds to action, to decisions repeated until they shape your mindset. Just as the body grows stronger with daily exercise, the cultivation of sexual energy requires integration into everyday life. It cannot remain as a distant concept in the mind. It must be lived, breathed, and felt in the small choices that shape each day. Without practice, the knowledge remains like a seed locked away in a drawer full of potential, but never alive. This is why traditions across time emphasize daily rituals, small yet powerful practices that slowly reshape the way you relate to your energy. Observation is the first step, learning to notice the impulses without being ruled by them, to see the hidden patterns behind the scenes of your desire. Conscious breathing follows, allowing you to guide the current upward, turning heat into light, restlessness into serenity. Movement plays its role as well, because energy that stagnates in the body turns heavy, while energy that flows through stretches, walks, or subtle movements becomes lighter and clearer. Creative outlets open another channel, giving the energy space to express itself in art, writing, music, or any form of imagination that expands instead of contracts. The heart is another crucial key. When energy rises into the chest, it no longer feels like instinct. It becomes tenderness, compassion, and the ability to connect more deeply with others. And finally, there is the practice of ritualized containment, a deliberate choice to withhold release, not through repression, but through presence. These moments are not about denial, but about cultivation, like allowing pressure to build in a vessel until it transforms into fuel that lights a greater fire. Behind all these practices lies a simple revelation. Mastery does not come from dramatic gestures, but from daily consistency. It is in the quiet moments, when you choose to breathe instead of react, to create instead of consume, to guide instead of scatter, that transformation unfolds. Over time, these small decisions accumulate, reshaping not only your relationship with desire, but your entire sense of vitality and clarity. Impact spreads into how you think, how you feel, and even how you show up in the world. Write in the comments, "I practice the alchemy," and let it remind you that this path is not about perfection, but about the steady integration of wisdom into daily life. Observation is the first true doorway into mastery, because without awareness, all practices remain surface level. When an impulse arises, most people move toward it automatically, believing it to be purely physical. But when you pause and ask yourself, what is really happening here? A hidden truth begins to emerge. Sometimes desire comes from the body's natural rhythm, but often it is emotional, a response to loneliness, boredom, or stress. And at other times, it is an escape, a way to avoid facing something deeper. This simple act of questioning shifts everything. The impulse is no longer an order you must obey, but a message you can interpret. What once felt like compulsion turns into dialogue, and that dialogue creates space for choice. Self-awareness is the bridge between unconscious repetition and conscious transformation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you recognize the impulse, the next step is learning to move its energy instead of letting it consume you. Breath becomes your greatest ally here. Deep, intentional breathing is not just oxygen feeding your cells. It is the pathway that carries energy from one level of being to another. When you breathe into the lower belly, expanding it fully, and then guide that breath upward, you are teaching your body to circulate energy rather than release it. Each inhale gathers the current, each exhale distributes it, and with time, what once burned chaotically in one place begins to rise into the heart and the mind. There, it transforms from instinct into serenity, from restlessness into clarity. This is where the mindset changes from survival to creation, from being ruled by urges to being guided by intention. Behind the scenes, something even more fascinating happens. As you practice this kind of breathing, your nervous system begins to adapt. Instead of associating arousal only with release, your body starts to recognize a new possibility: expansion. You feel calmer, more centered, yet more alive. The very energy that used to push outward is now feeding you from within. This is the subtle alchemy of breath, a revelation that turns what once drained you into a current that sustains you. But breath alone is not enough. If the body remains stagnant, energy, like water, must flow. When you sit too long, when your muscles are locked in place, when movement disappears from your routine, energy pools and grows heavy. That heaviness is often mistaken for desire, when in truth it is stagnation. Movement restores the flow. Walking, stretching, yoga, or even subtle rotations of the hips and spine awaken circulation, clearing channels that may have grown blocked. The ancients knew this truth well. Water in motion remains pure while still water decays. So too with your energy, it thrives when it flows. This combination of awareness, breath, and movement is not just practice. It is transformation in motion. It is the difference between living on autopilot and stepping into conscious evolution. Each decision you make to pause, to breathe, to move is a small act of reclaiming your essence, a quiet revolution that turns hidden impulses into sources of strength. Over time, these choices reshape not only your energy, but also your presence in the world. People may not know why, but they sense something different, a calm intensity, a vitality that does not fade after a moment, but lingers like a steady flame. Write in the comments, "I choose awareness," and let that declaration serve as a reminder that every impulse is not a command, but an opportunity to guide your journey. Creativity has always been the silent twin of sexual energy, born from the same source, moving with the same urgency, carrying the same intensity. When you channel that force into writing, painting, music, or any form of creation, something remarkable happens. The impulse that once demanded to be released through the body begins to express itself through the hands, the voice, the imagination. This shift is not just symbolic, it is transformative. Instead of feeling trapped by desire, you redirect it into form, into beauty, into impact. Behind the scenes of every great work of art, every song that moves the soul, every invention that reshaped the world, lies the current of this energy being sublimated into creation. To engage with it consciously is to step into the same timeless current that has fueled humanity's greatest expressions. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when energy rises higher than creativity, it touches the heart, and there the transformation is even more profound. Desire, when filtered through the chest, stops being hunger and becomes compassion. It no longer seeks to take, but to give. It softens into tenderness, deepens into care, and awakens a love that feels larger than yourself. This is the great alchemy of the heart. The same current that once fueled instinct now refines itself into empathy, into the ability to truly connect with another, being beyond appearances, beyond roles, beyond the surface. It is here that relationships evolve, because energy is no longer limited to attraction. It becomes the substance of genuine connection, a force that binds people through presence, attention, and authenticity. The hidden truth is that love is not separate from sexual energy. It is what happens when that energy is lifted and transmuted. Yet even this is not the final stage of mastery. There is also the practice of containment, a decision that at first glance may appear as denial, but in reality is a celebration of power. Choosing periods in which you do not release is not repression. It is ceremony. It is the conscious act of building a reservoir within yourself, of allowing pressure to accumulate until it transforms into something finer, brighter, more potent. Think of it as storing sunlight in a vessel. You feel it grow, you sense it expand, and you carry it with you in every gesture, every word, every silence. This ritual of containment is less about withholding and more about cultivating, turning a passing spark into a steady flame. Behind the scenes, this practice creates an unmistakable impact on every aspect of life. Your energy no longer scatters outward. It radiates inward and then outward again in a more refined form. You become sharper in thought, calmer in emotion, more magnetic in presence. People feel it without you needing to say a word. There is a weight, a luminosity that cannot be faked because it comes from within. The decisions you make in these quiet, personal moments ripple outward, influencing not just your body, but your destiny. You begin to see that every choice to contain, to elevate, to direct, is an act of transformation, one that shapes the very journey you are walking. Put down, "I cultivate my fire," and let it remind you that true mastery is not about suppression, but about turning what is raw into what is radiant. Sexual energy is often spoken of in hushed tones, yet when you strip away the layers of taboo, shame, and trivialization, you find something extraordinary. It is the hidden jewel of your inner temple, a jewel so potent that it can either burn you with its intensity or illuminate your entire being, depending on how you choose to use it. This treasure has been with you since the very beginning, flowing silently through your body, shaping your vitality, your clarity, and even your spirit. The hidden truth is that what many dismiss as instinct is actually one of the most refined tools for transformation you will ever possess. Like a flame, it waits for direction left unchecked. It consumes, but guided with intention, it lights the path to strength, creativity, and awakening. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there is a revelation that often goes unnoticed. Your age is not a barrier to this mastery. It is an advantage. In youth, the abundance of energy can make waste seem inconsequential. The body replenishes quickly, and so the importance of direction is easily overlooked. But with maturity comes a different kind of awareness. Every drop of energy carries more weight. Every choice leaves a clearer impact, and the decisions you make ripple through your health, your emotions, and your spirit. This is where mastery becomes possible, because the fire that once felt uncontrollable can now be guided with precision. Behind the scenes of your own journey, something extraordinary begins to unfold when you recognize this. Instead of seeing energy as a fleeting pleasure, you start to see it as a companion, an ally, a constant current that can be cultivated to sustain you at every level of your life. You notice how vitality deepens when energy is preserved, how creativity sharpens when it is redirected, how spiritual connection expands when it is lifted. Your presence changes. People feel a calm intensity around you, a sense of fullness that cannot be faked. Because it comes from an inner reservoir you have chosen to protect and grow. This shift in mindset marks a turning point. You stop looking at desire as something to be feared or mindlessly obeyed and begin to see it as a sacred tool for growth. Every impulse becomes an invitation to decide, will you let it scatter into emptiness, or will you channel it into vitality, clarity, and depth? That decision is the essence of mastery. It is not about denying yourself or forcing perfection, but about learning the art of direction, about choosing presence over habit, transformation over loss, creation over consumption. And as this awareness takes root, you realize that the very energy people often see as ordinary is in truth the foundation of extraordinary living. It is the same current that fuels your health, that breathes life into your creativity, that opens doors to spiritual insight. This is why age becomes an advantage, because the maturity of your awareness allows you to use this treasure with intention. You are no longer carried away by impulse. You are the one guiding the current, shaping it into the force that sustains your journey. Put down, I honor the jewel within, and let it remind you that the greatest treasure you carry is already inside. You waiting for direction, ready to illuminate your path. If you've stayed with me until this point, it means something in this message has resonated with you, maybe even awakened a hidden truth you already carried inside. That's exactly why I invite you to subscribe, so we can keep exploring together the kind of knowledge that adds real value to your journey. And if you made it all the way here, leave a comment saying, I'm with you until the end, so I know you're walking this path with me. Simple like on this video also helps me feel the connection we've built through these words. And if you're ready to go even further, there's a video right here that beautifully complements everything we've just shared. Click and continue with me over there.